ACoS does not matter. Not that ad metrics don't matter, but I think solely looking at the ACoS paints a very skewed picture and doesn't always allow brands to hit their full growth potential.
All right. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Amazon Strategist Show. My name's Ben. I'm the host, and this is the show that is all strategy with no hacks, no silver bullets, and no magic pills. Just a real practical strategy for serious Amazon sellers. I'm excited, guys, because today we have the incredible Aman of AO2 Marketing, and he's here to share a ton of knowledge with us. We were just talking behind the scenes about how he's been traveling all over the place and doing all kinds of crazy things. But before we get into that, a little bit about Aman. So Aman, he leveraging his knowledge of the Amazon and e-commerce space, which we're going to dive into, his operations experience, his logistics and PPC advertising experience. He's helped brands crush their growth goals on Amazon, scale to 6 figures and beyond, and explore new opportunities for their business. He's also, and I personally worked with him before on this, he is amazing with systems. So he's got a passion and a lot of background building robust systems, and these systems have actually been used and deployed by AO2, and I'm sure we'll touch on this a little bit today, but across AO2, optimized and actually empowered to allow an international team now of 50 plus people achieve growth and work with all the different Amazon brands. I think you guys have several hundred now that you're helping out in this space. And he's also got a passion for small businesses. He's worked with a lot of small businesses to lead growth and really help them build relationships in the marketplace and win on this crazy world that is Amazon and beyond. So if you sell online, Aman is probably your guy. He can probably help you out with a lot of different things. If not Amazon, I know Aman also has a lot of great connections. So he's a great resource, and we're lucky to have him here today. So without further ado, Aman, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. And man, you're hyping me up way too much. I know you know just as much as I do about all this stuff, but I'm glad to be here.
Well, I don't know about that. No, we appreciate your time. Right before this, we were talking a little bit, but just to kind of recap, where have you traveled in the last 3 weeks? I know you've been literally all over the place.
Yeah, man. So home base for me is San Diego. I actually just got back Saturday, but in the last 4 weeks now, I've been across the United States. I was in Florida for a bit. I was in Utah for a bit, and then came back maybe for 17 hours. And then I was back on a plane in London for two shows. One was the Forsha Group Aggregator Show, and the other one was the 3 Colts Extra Horsepower event. And in between, I found some time to go to Barcelona and hang out with my brother for a few days. So that was pretty.
So do you even know what time zone you're in? Or are you like, are you even operating in PST, or are you operating in like some weird global time zone right now?
No, I'm operating on matcha and like Starbucks snacks right now. Like I'm just fully fueled by Starbucks.
Nice.
Yeah. Powering through, but I think I'll be fine by the end of the week.
No, love it. Well, I bet a lot of people can relate to that too. So let's take it back a little bit. I know we've just kind of hyped you up with that intro, but take us back to kind of the beginning and tell us a little bit about, everyone's got a different story, but how you got into kind of this Amazon world, this Amazon journey, if you could.
Yeah, 100%. So before joining on as an account manager with AO2 back in, it was like 2020. Feels like forever ago. But before my experience with Amazon, I had about 6 years of traditional digital marketing experience. So running Google ad campaigns and, speaking to small business, I was really working with a lot of small local businesses here in San Diego, helping them like do their Google SEO, building websites, and just doing general digital marketing efforts. And I kind of just stumbled upon a job post for AO2 as an Amazon account manager. And I was like, oh, e-commerce, like that sounds cool. I know I shop on Amazon. So I applied and ended up getting the position. And I was an account manager with AO2 for about a year. And then we got to a point where we were able to grow and hire and kind of promote from within. And I was fortunate enough, and I worked my butt off enough, I guess, to get promoted to director of operations, and did that for like another year. And then, got senior director of operations. So I just want to keep climbing. Hopefully that's the goal. But it's been 3 long years, I want to say. It always feels longer than 3 years. Like I think now, with the amount of hours I've put in, it feels like I've been doing Amazon for 5 or 7 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably put in like a decade's worth of time. It's not a 40-hour work week. You're putting it quite a bit more than that.
No matter how much you do that, Ben, Amazon changes every day. So like, not to say it doesn't matter, but it's you're always a student of the game, I like to say.
Right. Well, I feel like that's kind of the often forgot about or unsexy side of, running an agency as well, is like, it's not just following SOPs all the time. You have to stay on top. You have to be on your A game, right? And that's part of the reason why Amazon sellers who are starting to really grow and might have multiple channels, they look for help in getting an agency, because an agency does a lot of that staying on the front lines and the edge of kind of all the new advances. And that's something you really can't do unless you're full time in it, right? I think every week there's some kind of update on Amazon that you have to be apprised of.
Exactly. And just being an agency, and, being an Amazon verified partner, and, we're working on our Walmart verified partnership and all the channels. But when you're an agency, you kind of just get access and insights into things that you wouldn't as a normal seller. So it's always exciting to me when I talk to our clients or to new potential clients to show them all those new updates and changes that are coming and how they're going to benefit them.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome. Well, so I know there's a lot of things that I want to ask you about. So let's kind of shift into what we call our Q&A section. And just these are going to be questions that we've either gathered from our audience, things that I personally want to ask you, or things that, are just good to know and you are the expert on. So I guess kind of the first one is, I've had plenty in, my background, even before working with Seller Candy, is same thing as you did. I was an account manager, so these questions would come up all the time. But it's a very basic question until you start unpacking it. And that's, how do I increase my sales on Amazon, right? Is it as simple as I flip the switch and turn some advertising on? Or when you have a customer or client of your guys, how are you kind of helping walk them through that question? Maybe it's not asked as simply as that, but...
No, and oftentimes it is, right? Like people will just say, hey, like, how come my competitor has X amount more sales than me? Like my product's better, my creative's better, whatever it may be. And I think where I like to start on Amazon with this question, how do you get your sales up, is really looking at your conversion rate. And that's, on a product level, on a total catalog level. I always like to say to hone your focus to your first or top 3 to 5 products. If you've got a large catalog, always try to focus on like those big dominoes that are going to have a bigger effect as they're knocked down. You can optimize the smaller sellers as much as you want, but they're not really going to drive the sales growth that you want to see in a short period of time. So really, first of all, I would say start by looking at and analyzing your top 3 to 5 products, and really start with the conversion rate, and look over a course of, 3 months, 6 months, a year, take into account big events like Prime Day or Christmas or the holidays to make sure you're accounting for those kind of peaks and valleys in sales, and try to see if there's a period of time during the year when your conversion rate is optimized, and try to figure out why that is. And so an example might be, I'm drinking a tea here. And the reason I bought this tea is like, it's got a bunch of like advertising on it, like superfood, chlorophyll, aloe, a bunch of these like healthy ingredients. And I'm just trying to be healthy. So I saw it in the store and it was green and I was like, oh, this has to be good for me. And I grabbed it. But really, like, starting with that conversion rate and knowing what your specific key audience is looking for in a product. I think a lot of people approach Amazon with a product first mentality versus a brand first mentality. And I feel like when you build a brand, whether it's on or off Amazon, you attract a following of specific people that are looking for a specific solution to a specific problem, and really honing in on those people and getting your conversion rate to increase based on targeting specific factors that those people identify with is a big key. And I know I'm talking a lot in like generalities right now. So to dive a little bit closer, looking at your conversion rate, that will kind of help you identify what you need to do or what the next trigger is to increasing sales. So if you've already got, if you're looking at the competition, your conversion rate's better than them, the answer might simply be, hey, turn up the ad spend a little bit. You're going to see the volume uptick and you're going to be hitting more profitable sales. However, you also want to take into account your COGS, all of Amazon's fees. If you're working with an agency, all of their fees, and then any of the ad spend or anything else you're going to spend to get the product into someone's hands. Because you don't want to pump up advertising and then realize after the fact you were losing 5 or 10 cents every sale because you weren't taking into account all of the fees and all the factors with the COGS. So I would say it's kind of wrap this up in a nutshell, and we can keep going on this for sure because this is a loaded question. But
it is.
Start with the conversion rate and look at things you need to do to optimize, right? If you know your conversion rate's low, take a look at your SEO. It's very likely that you're not using enough long tail keywords and not placing them early enough in the title to really affect ranking. Also, making sure you fill out all the back-end keywords and search term fields. And then really the way Amazon works, I always like to attune it to this, is the more you give them, the more they give you. So Amazon's whole mission is to be the most consumer-friendly platform on the planet. So the more information you can give potential buyers about your product, whether that's directions for use, ingredient labels, suggested products, or even bundles, like pairing products together, the more info you can stuff into a listing in a easy to read, easy to digest format, the more chance you're going to convert with your target audience. And so definitely, whenever we look at a listing, you want to make sure you're covering the basics, which are have an optimized title for SEO, make sure you're putting in all the back-end search terms and keywords, make sure you have good bullets. If you have a product with ingredients, make sure you have the ingredients label and you're listing the ingredients as well as the directions for use. And then moving further, make sure you have really good, really clear A+ content, and then 6 images in a video are a must. We always like to recommend, this is kind of like a little pro tip, if you've got 5 videos on any listing, even if all 5 videos aren't necessarily related to the product, as long as they're brand related, and ideally, you want to relate them as much to the product as possible, you kind of dominate the digital real estate on your page and push off other competitor videos through that next kind of slide button. And I use this word a lot. I call it digital real estate, but really that's what I view a listing as. And PPC is really just like auctioning to have your real estate flyer like on the first page, right? So
Sure.
you want to make sure that on that digital real estate, you are dominating as much as possible and not allowing other people to steal your landscape, so to speak. And you do that by, having good SEO, running good defensive campaigns, and then making sure you have the content that speaks to your audience. Once you have those things in mind, even if the market is super flooded, as long as you can really hone in on that key audience, then that's where you go and you start bumping up the ad spend, through all the different ad types, whether it's SP, SP, SD. You want to be doing defensive, you want to be doing brand attack, you want to be doing category. And to take this a step further, I feel like a lot of people ask me too, like, oh, what's the standard ad structure you want to launch? And it's so dependent per category and so dependent per product. If you're really new or still trying to figure out what's working for you on the PPC side, I recommend launching a campaign in like every single match type, right? So like launch a broad, launch a phrase, launch an exact, launch a set of auto campaigns, launch a couple category campaigns, and then see which campaigns are bringing you the most profit, and then allocate your budget 80% towards those profitable campaigns and 20% toward more ranking or just search campaigns to get the traffic going. I know that was a long answer, but I hope that kind of answers the question.
No, I mean, I feel like we can just end the podcast right there. That was, you just covered everything you need to be $1 million seller, right? All jokes aside, like I think there's so much to unpack in that, right? So thanks for that answer. I think for me, just a couple things that come to mind, right, are it's a good kind of guiding principle to say, hey, let's start by just monitoring that conversion rate, which obviously if you're a brand new seller just launching your product for the first time, you're not going to have a ton of data, but start establishing what your baseline is, right? And it sounds like that's kind of where you guys start, is looking, if you're working with a client that's already had a year or two of data, you can go and look what the previous, kind of baseline was and have we improved and what do we need to do to further improve? And that gives you that really good kind of launch pad, right? Is that what you guys normally do when a client comes to you?
100%. So we actually start by doing a competitor analysis, something called a 3-axis bubble chart. We take, either you list competitors specifically that you want to track, or we'll come up with like a list of your top 10 competitors, and we'll actually map them out on an axis based on review velocity and sales velocity. And then the bigger your dot, the bigger your sales and reviews are, right? So we kind of go and we make sure like we put you on a map, and then we look at the competition around you, we put them on a map. So then we have kind of clear actionable targets for like, okay, cool. We know these 3 competitors own 30% of the market, and they're just above us in terms of reviews, just above us in terms of sales. Let's aim to get 10% of that market share from each of them. And we know we can grow our sales X amount. And that's kind of how we do some of our projections. Obviously, a lot has to do with pricing and reviews, especially on Amazon. I feel like a lot of people, even if they're not shopping directly on Amazon, I know I do this all the time. Like I'll walk into Best Buy. If I'm going to buy something, I'll go to check and see if it's cheaper on Amazon so I can price match. Because I like to get stuff the same day. The 2-day shipping isn't fast enough for me sometimes.
I get it.
But I feel like making sure, you can have the best SEO in the world, you can have the best content in the world, but if your price point and your reviews aren't speaking to your audience, it's going to be really hard to get that conversion rate up, and then therefore increase your ad spend and get those sales up.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think the other thing just that I wanted to pull out, and we actually, our first guest of the season, Matt from CapForge, I think he's actually another San Diego guy, but he actually said yeah, awesome. Shout out CapForge. I think he said a very similar thing, which is to you mentioned earlier, a lot of people are coming in and they're very product centric rather than brand centric, and maybe this is your first time launching a product, so maybe you don't know or have the context on that yet. But as you decide you're going to build out a brand, coming into it with that mindset of the brand is defined by who's that niche down target customer, like how can I serve them better? And Matt said that was really the way that he sees all the successful Amazon sellers these days function, is they are looking at, I'm interested in, something that I can give to people who are beachgoers. What about, and then niche down, okay, not just beachgoers, but they're paddleboarders, not just paddleboarders, but they're, stand up or, lay flat paddleboarders, and then finding how do I serve that specific person, right? And so I really like that you said that too. And I was going to ask you kind of a follow-up question there, but have you seen that become more and more the case on Amazon? Because I know, for example, when I got into the Amazon world, you could still, this is 6-ish years ago, you could throw a product on Amazon that you got from Alibaba. Branding did not really matter as long as you checked all the other boxes. And then I think that's from what I've seen change, but I want to get your take, given you guys have worked with so many people.
I kind of feel, I have a mixed opinion on this one. So I feel like if you're first to market in anything, that initial strategy still works, right? Like you can grab a product from Alibaba, you can go find a really cheap manufacturer, but you really have to be first to market. And you have to understand the market's going to get flooded at some point. So, looking at one of the biggest categories I see exploding on Amazon right now is all of these like adaptogenic mushroom supplements, right? So like chaga, lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, like everyone's launching a supplement like every other day with all these products. And I remember the first few that were on were able to kind of do that exactly, whether it was a pill, whether it was a liquid. The branding didn't matter. They had like maybe 3 images up. They had a few bullet points and they had a short title. And because they were the only ones available, they were getting all those sales volume and all that search volume as well. But increasingly now people differentiate by content, and it's so proven by all these new platforms popping up. So you've got like, TikTok's been exploding over the last couple of years. Threads just launched and they have some odd million users. So people love to digest content, especially when it speaks to them. And so going back to that point of being super minute, right? So like even in the space of, let's say like reishi supplements, there's like 4 different forms you can take it in. And there's no way in today's day and age, you can just be like, oh, well, I want to sell to this entire category. Unless you're like one of the biggest brands in the world, right? You look at like Nike or Adidas, something like that. Like they can make a running shoe for anyone. But if you're a small shoe brand or you're just starting out, you're not going to be able to make a running shoe that everyone's going to want at scale and get everyone to buy into it at the same time. So starting super, super niche, right? Like if you're in the supplement space, for example, let's say, okay, I know people don't like taking pills, so I'm actually going to make a lion's mane liquid dropper that you can drop into your water and it's tasteless. That way you can just drink it. It's easier. And then you're going after a specific subset of people that are looking for a lion's mane supplement and don't want a pill form. So really having a differentiating factor to your product is so key. And I think, again, like with the brand thing, you don't have to build a brand, but you either have to build a brand to attract the following away from other brands where the market is kind of saturated, or you have to be first to market and no one else is offering what you have, or your product just has to be so much better or so much more niche that no one else is trying to compete with. And those are kind of like the 3 avenues you can go down. Obviously, if you're an established seller and you notice that, your competitors are launching new products in the space, it is a great opportunity because you already kind of have that search volume. And, with all the new brand tools Amazon's releasing, and this kind of speaks to that point of how things are changing, you can now target your existing customers with new product releases. You can send them emails. You can request reviews and feedback on new products. So I think Amazon has noticed, and they're making an effort as well to make it a more brand-centric platform. Another example is Amazon Posts and like basically turning Amazon to this Instagram style feed where you can have these mini posts or these mini blurbs about your products. So I think I've seen both, but the only way you're going to be successful at scale with like that first strategy of the Alibaba launch is if you're first to market and your product is like so niche that no one else is even in the space yet. But guaranteed at some point down the road, the market's going to get flooded and someone's going to have a lower price than you. So at that point, you want to make sure you have a strong brand identity because then you're going after the repeat customers or the customers who are going to buy you regardless of price point, regardless of product differentiators because they align with your brand.
All right, that was an amazing answer. That is awesome. I think the other thing I was going to ask you about is in terms of like the testing of your conversion rate. Like let's say you've got that data, you kind of know what your baseline is, or you maybe have compared it to what the industry, your niche standard is if you have that information. Are you using Amazon experiments to run a lot of tests? And I'm asking because that's something I've always been interested in, but not personally done. But I've heard, at some of the shows that we've gone to that Amazon experiments being brought up a lot more. I know manually you can run a lot of similar things in a way, but it's not going to do the same thing. So what is the way that you guys actually will kind of split test, making these changes?
Yeah, 100%. So the Amazon A/B test is a great example, and this is something we use a lot, whether it's for testing a new title with different keywords, testing a main image. I think there's a few more things you can actually test on there now. I know those are the 2 main things that we've normally tested with the A/B experiments, but generally it's nice because then you're not like going in and fully changing your SEO. So like you're less likely to have that organic rank drop. Let's say like you put some wrong keywords in or like, you change some keywords that you were ranking on great before that now you're not going to be ranking on because they're not included. It kind of mitigates any, I don't want to say any risk, but it mitigates some of the risk of making those changes immediately because you throw it through a test. And usually we try to run every experiment for at least 2 weeks. I feel like 2 weeks of data is the minimum you kind of need to be able to make a decision. If you have the liberty to run it longer, definitely do. Like a month would be great. But the A/B experiments is a great way to mitigate the risk of making the full change and then wanting to reverse and then realizing like, oh man, it's going to be terrible and like hitting my organic ranking back. So I would say it's a good way to test. And then the other thing we do is depending on the product or depending on the category, if you've got multiple variations that are generally or effectively the same product, we test between the variations to see, as long as they're similarly ranked or getting the same conversion data roughly, we kind of do changes, absolute changes instead of doing the A/B test on the variations to see between variations. Okay, if we change the title on this one, but we don't on this one, will the sales actually increase or decrease? And we know they're both started at the same baseline.
That's a great tip. I like that. I feel like there's so many more different ways we can go there, but I want to move on to kind of the next question I have on my list here, which is how do you know, and how do you kind of, guide clients when they come to you and ask, how much should I actually be spending in terms of advertising? If it's a new seller, oftentimes they're going to have a very restricted budget. I think generally you guys are probably working closer with maybe more established brands, but do you have a way that you kind of can frame that up in terms of like, how much should I be spending, especially when it pertains to Amazon specific, advertisement, paid media, all that? Because we also have to factor in like maybe that person's got their direct to consumer site, their Google. So I'm curious how you guys kind of work through that.
100%. And so whenever someone asks me this question, I actually ask them a question back, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being your bottom line profit and 10 being top line revenue, where do you sit on that scale right now for the next 3 months, 6 months, year? What is your goal? Are you more top line revenue focused or are you more profitability focused? And so most people answer like a 5, and it gives you no help, right? Because obviously you want to have both. You want to have the top line growth and you want to be profitable. But that question, if someone is, on either side of the scale, kind of helps how I frame then my response. And if someone's more top line revenue focused, or if they're bottom line focused, we always start with what I mentioned earlier, which is doing a full COGS analysis. So again, starting with your top 3 or 5 products, you don't try to do it all in a night. Start with your few top products, you get the COGS from that customer, and then you add in all of Amazon's fees, whether it's the referral fee, the FBA shipping fee, pick and pack, whatever it is that you're using Amazon for that they're going to charge you on. And then what we do, which I'm sure isn't too different from what other agencies are doing, but we'll actually add in like our own fees averaged across the catalog. And then we'll do like, that will give us like a baseline of, okay, if we're spending no money on ads, we're just fulfilling the product through Amazon and shipping it in, we are, let's say 30% profitable on each sale. And so from there, we're able to see, okay, based on that 30%, how much can we spend on the cost per acquisition for a new customer for this product? Or how much can we spend per click on this product before we shut off that campaign or before we stop bidding and that sale doesn't become profitable? And so starting with that COGS analysis and starting with that previous question of, are you top line focused or are you revenue focused? That helps us gauge like, okay, let's say they're top line focused, they've got a good margin and they're okay with kind of like hemorrhaging their ACoS for a bit just to get their ranking up and to get the volume up and to get some sales in. Then we'll say, okay, like we can aggressively spend, we can aim for a 60 or 70% ACoS on the account level because we know we don't have to be profitable for this time being. And then really it just is dependent on each brand, how much budget they have. The baseline I recommend if you're just starting out on the other end of the spectrum is a minimum of usually $100 a day. So like $3,000 a month is what you need for the first 90 days to really be able to test out your ad spend and get campaigns going. So that is a baseline if you're a new seller. And then if you're an established seller, really you want to go through the COGS and make sure that as you're growing in scale, you're not sacrificing profitability. And a lot of times that can lead us to realizing like, hey, actually we need to increase the price like $2 because we're sitting way below competitors. We're losing out on, an extra $2 of profit per sale. And we can allocate that money toward PPC and then be able to raise our budget X amount. So that is kind of how we go about it. And one more thing I like to tell sellers, and I think you have it in your questions that we'll probably get to it, but I don't like to focus on just the advertising ACoS. I really like to focus on the total ACoS because otherwise you're not tracking the organic growth month over month. And ideally, the way we view it, you want about 20 to 30% of your sales coming from ads and 70 to 80% coming from organic sales in the long run. Because you don't want to just keep play. You want your organic ranking to reach a point where you're not having to pay as much to acquire a new customer.
Sure. So for a mature brand, that's what you guys aim to see is that 30% paid, the other 70% coming organically. That totally makes sense. I think that's in line with what I've normally told brands in the past.
Exactly. And usually when you're starting out, like if you just start selling, if you get a 50-50 split, like you're at a golden stage for like the first 6 months, if you can achieve that. Normally what I see is kind of the opposite, like 70% coming from the ads and then 20 to 30% of sales coming organically. And then as you grow the campaigns correctly and then you shut off old campaigns and launch new ones that are optimized, you see that number start to shift with more of the sales being attributed to the organic side.
Oh, no, that's great. Awesome. Cool. I know you mentioned Walmart at the beginning of this, but when you're talking or working with brands, I know there's a lot of people that are going to be watching or listening to this that have started on Amazon. There's also going to be a subset of people that also maybe started direct to consumer and then launched on Amazon. But generally, I see a lot of Amazon sellers, they leverage the platform because it has such a big audience before expanding out. When do you see that moving to other platforms or even just other markets, Amazon markets, becomes a more viable option? Do you have any kind of rough frameworks for that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So in an ideal world, you're launching all of them on the same day. And I know that's not happening, right? But I love to describe e-commerce as a spider web. I use this analogy all the time, whether it's with my team or with clients. And so I view Amazon, even though Amazon's an awesome, big, thick thread of that spider web, it's one thread, right? So you can maximize your potential on Amazon and then not even be utilizing the other threads of the spider web, which are Shopify or, Mercado Libre, Etsy, whatever it is. And so really you want to build out as many channels or as many threads in that spider web as you can so that you're attracting and catching the most flies. Because, even myself working in e-commerce, I don't know how much I actually shop on Amazon anymore because I feel like at this point I love going to the store and like seeing different packaging and like actually feeling things. So you don't know always where your ideal demographic is going to shop. I mean, ideally you're defining it super clearly and then you're able to target them specifically in those channels, but that's like a lot down the road. My suggestion is always try to launch on as many as you can in the initial, even if you're not let's say you launch on Walmart and it's not optimized for the next year, but you're working on Amazon that is optimized, that's fine. The main thing is, again, early adoption is key. So like when a new platform pops up, I try to learn everything about it so our team can work on it and we can get clients on it. Because the earlier you get in, and I'm sure you've seen this with Amazon, the easier it is to keep and establish that organic ranking and then outrank competitors in the long run. So obviously if I launch a product today versus someone else who's launched for a year, I'm going to come in with 0 reviews. And even if my product is better at a lower price point, them just having some reviews and having an established organic ranking, they might continue to beat my product out for a long time.
Right.
So I would say as funds and time allow, obviously launch on each one. And ideally, you're able to work with a team or with an agency or internally by yourself and come up with a strategy and kind of timelines for when you want to launch on each platform. Luckily, what's so nice about a lot of these platforms now is they have, just like Amazon, they kind of have a bulk feed file template where 90% of the fields are applicable from each other. They're just called different things. And so you can just fill out a bunch of these sheets and upload them all in one night or over the course of the week. And at least that way you're getting all your products listed. You don't have to worry about that step. Because I feel like that's the biggest barrier to entry is just like getting the products live. But then once they're live, you do the same thing that you would on any channel, right? Like you do your ad spend, you optimize the SEO, you do the content. And really, I would say one big important thing about launching on these different channels is making content unique to that channel. A lot of the content you make can be evergreen because you're going to need detail page images no matter what. But then making sure you have the sizings right, making sure you have keywords that align with what people are searching on that platform included in the content is super key. And then making sure that all of the written content on that listing is ranking for the SEO algorithm on that channel, right? Because I might take the SEO from Amazon and apply it to a Walmart listing and I'm not ranking for anything because the search terms aren't the same. They don't have the same volume. So in short, ideally all in one night, but that's not possible. So try to parse it out and look for where your competition is selling the most in terms of channels. And again, start with the biggest ones first. Like don't try to go list on Home Depot or Lowe's or one of the smaller sellers because you're like, oh wow, I'm going to have 100% market dominance. Because those sales are going to be minuscule compared to what you're going to see on Walmart, Amazon, Shopify. And the last thing I'll add to this point is, speaking to the importance of having a brand nowadays, I always recommend doing Shopify and Amazon at the same time. Like if you're going to launch Shopify, launch on Amazon at the same time and vice versa. If you're launching on Amazon, launch on Shopify. Because there's a large likelihood that as your product gets more eyeballs on Amazon, you're going to get more Google search volume as well. And you want to be able to direct people to a website where they can go and your fulfillment costs are likely cheaper and your profits likely higher. And the goal is have Shopify or have your website or your main source be that like D2C website because you're going to be able to control the sale and control the customer information a lot more.
Yeah, that was awesome. And that's a really good final point too about having the Shopify piece and just to be able to control, I like to say, you're controlling that narrative. And I tell people this when they ask too, like, oh, I'm thinking about selling on Amazon. Maybe I have like some resellers that are selling my product on there. And it's kind of the same thing. It's like, if you're not controlling that space, it's your products, at least with Amazon, it's going to end up there most likely anyway. But also you want to be the one controlling it, right? But and it's kind of the same as true, right? If you just have a bare bones Shopify store up, as you build your brand on Amazon, you'll probably start getting that in there. And now at least you can control the narrative of the traffic that's seeing you on Google. So it's a great point. I wanted to point out that when you reference doing any actual work, Aman, you always say, I'm not gonna add my stuff to every platform in one night. And there's a couple other instances, and so I can tell that you're hard worker because all of the work related things you're like, it's a night activity, which tells me you are up doing late nights all the time. So kudos to you. And that's all. Those are all great pieces. I think like you said earlier too. It's also that real estate piece, right? Is Amazon is every listing you have on different platforms is more real estate. That being said, like the caveat, obviously, as you pointed out, is that it can become overwhelming and it's more to manage. There are pieces you have to manage, right? And so if you're not at that stage,
dedicate your resources and dedicate your time to the most profitable channel first. Like, don't worry about the smaller channels because they will figure themselves out as you have time, or as you grow the bigger channel, you're able to hire internally or use an agency or whatever method to kind of manage those smaller channels. Don't forget about the bread and butter. Keep whether it's Amazon or Shopify or Walmart, whatever that channel is, make sure you're nurturing that one the most because that's going to have your greatest potential for growth.
Love that. Cool. So let's talk about something I haven't asked any of our guests this, but for sellers that are watching this or what have you, we both worked in the agency worlds, you've done a lot with AO2, but we kind of touched on it at the beginning of this show, but can you kind of break down what an Amazon agency really does that maybe they can offer to a seller that seller couldn't go and do themselves, right? Because there's a point in time where you as an Amazon seller might be starting your brand and say, I'm just going to do everything myself, or I'm going to build my own small team. But then there becomes a time later where either you get stuck in a trap of trying to do everything yourself, or you have way too many hats. But among, those and other reasons, I'm curious, what are kind of the things that an agency really handles that a seller wouldn't do themselves or couldn't do themselves?
100%. So I wouldn't even say that an agency does anything that no one else can do, but I think it's the culmination of the team. So if you wanted to be able to have the capabilities of a full service agency in-house, you're going to have to hire a heck of a lot of team members just to manage each kind of individual part. And I feel like, at least with us, and I know a lot of agencies are this way, we have very specialized team members, right? So like everyone we hire, everyone on our team is an expert in their one vertical or their one area. Versus when you tend to hire in-house, it's usually like one social media manager and like maybe one e-commerce manager, where you have one or two or three people trying to wear, like you said, many hats and do many things. And they're not able to, or, it's not expectable for one person to be an expert in 5 or 6 different things at a time and be perfect at it or be the best at it. So I think you get the depth of a experienced team that has very specific expertise in all the different verticals for Amazon, whether it's operations, PPC, logistics, account health, branding. So again, like just those 5 things are so vital, and you almost need to hire 5 different people in-house and pay them large salaries to be able to afford and maintain and grow at the same rate an agency would be able to provide you. Other than that, I really feel that, I've been attending so many of these marketing events, whether our team was attending Accelerate while I was in London at a couple other events. We get the inside scoop on a lot of things from Amazon or from Walmart or from these channel partners. And, through verified partnerships, even like with Walmart, I know we're working on our verified partnership. We don't have it yet, but just being an agency that they recognize, we were able to get some beta testing access that a normal seller just doesn't have access to. So having those exclusive kind of benefits or those sneak peeks of new features to come is a big benefit. The other thing I'll mention is, and this is kind of specific to Amazon, having someone to deal with seller support. And I know you can speak to this a ton with Seller Candy, but we have a team, and most agencies will have a team of specialized ops team members that, will deal with Amazon case logs or deal with product compliance, helping you get products reinstated or helping update products when the listing changes just aren't going through. So if anything, the biggest benefit the agency provides is you're able to save your time for growing your brand at the top level. And we, or any other agency, can kind of manage all the micro influence, or I don't want to say influencers, but the micro factors that influence that macro picture of the overall sales growth or brand or business growth. So because we're so expert in so many things, we're able to knock them out a lot faster than you would be able to do on your own or even with your own internal team. And a lot of the time with less error or less attempts, right? So you might take, as an individual seller, you might take 5 or 6 attempts through a case log and wait 2 weeks to get a product back up and running, which might be a top seller. And at that point, competitors have overtaken you, you've lost organic ranking, and to get those sales back, it's going to take you a long, long time. Versus you work with an agency, right? And like a lot of my clients have me on speed dial, they'll call me and say, I'm on product down. I'm like, great, our team's on it. And within 24 hours, 48 hours, we're able to get that product back up and running. So just that time-saving element, and like really time is more valuable than anything in my opinion. So buying back your time and being able to use your time as a brand owner to focus on bigger picture things, and leaving all those micro actions and the day-to-day nuances to an agency, that's the biggest benefit I would say we provide.
Yeah, no, love it. I mean, I can echo that too, right? Because, just my role here at Seller Candy, but also previous experience, like there's so many parts that go into just running your Amazon business, and it's only getting more complex, especially once you start playing at that, the upper levels where they're investing tons of money. They might have budgets way, way bigger than your brand does. like you need A players or someone that's being paid to literally stay on that cutting edge, right? And that's normally not feasible for you as a brand owner who's got maybe 5 products on Amazon. You're trying, maybe you have a 2-person team and you're simultaneously trying to deal with product development and, accounts receivable and shipping, all that stuff. So yeah, I totally see that. The other point I was going to call out is, I mentioned very briefly earlier, but a common conversation I have is people who they've waited too long and they've been kind of in a stagnant mode with their brand, because while there is a time and a place to do everything and try to learn it, that's how, you and I both cut our teeth, like learning flat files and all these things. That is valuable, but at the same time, like it's only valuable to a certain extent. And I see a lot of business owners or, people that are working with their Amazon brand, they get to this point where they should have probably stopped a year ago and handed it off, but they're caught in this trap of still trying to hold on to doing it all themselves. And the reality is that normally for a price point, to have most agencies these days, like for a price point that's cheaper than you hiring one full-time in-house person or what have you, an agency is going to come in and they've already got everything ready to roll. And so, yeah, I think that it does. Of course, there's a time and a place where it doesn't make sense too, but
exactly.
I'd say for most growing companies, it does at a certain point. Do you have like a rough time you see that turning point, happen? Of course, a brand's not going to come to you day one when they're only doing, $0 up to maybe $10,000 a month. But is there kind of a dollar threshold or a point where you really see that an agency becomes a real option every brand should consider?
I would say I wouldn't even look at it from a dollars in sales or profitability perspective. I'd look at it from a systems and operations perspective. And really, the leaner your processes and team are, and like the easier your product is to fulfill, right? If I have one product and it's like a plastic bottle, it's super easy to fulfill. And I have optimized my supply chain. I've optimized the way my team functions with the 3PL, whatever it is. The more streamlined your business is, the less outside help you need. And then maybe you do have more time to dedicate to doing the ads yourself or doing the content yourself. But in terms of that kind of threshold or that point, I would say once you reach a point where you realize like, hey, I'm not able to hit my own deadlines, or I'm not able to get everything done the way I had envisioned, right? Like I'm not able to manage all the PPC campaigns 24/7. I'm not able to create all the content myself, or I'm not able to, in general, just like run the business of supply chain myself. Start outsourcing, whether it's to, individuals in your team or an agency, because really no agency and no outside person can come and do your job as a brand owner, unless you're selling your business, right? And that's a whole different story. But you as the brand owner really have such a unique perspective on the product and the brand, and no one's going to drive growth for your brand like you will. So leave the things that are time consuming that can be optimized by someone else to someone else. And another big point that I kind of didn't mention that I want to bring up now is another benefit of working with agencies, and at least with our team, I know, we're about half in the US and half remote, spread throughout Europe, Philippines, India, Brazil. We've got people all over now. The way we assemble our teams is we try to, number one, we go for quality, not quantity, right? So we're not overloading accounts onto account managers. And each account manager has like their own sort of supporting cast or team behind them. So we really have 24/7 coverage on basically every account we manage, because there's always 4 people assigned to any account, and one of those 4 people at a given moment is going to be online. And so whether a product goes down or whether you need something adjusted in ads, like having that 24/7 coverage is just something you can't do as an individual brand.
Oh, that's cool. Love it. So with that, let's shift gears here a little bit. I know you kind of already answered this, so I'm going to ask you my lead-in question, which is, do you think pineapple belongs on pizza? Which I'm very anxious to hear your answer to.
Honestly, I am a big fan of pineapple on pizza. I know that might rub people wrong.
Another one. Honestly, I think almost everyone has said that, which I'm kind of shocked. I'm personally a fan, but normally I'm the only one in the room when I go to a party that's saying that. The reason I'm asking is this is kind of our controversial take section. So I'd really like to ask you if you have any kind of debatable, controversial take, something in the industry that maybe everyone else is going this way and you think actually the answer is over here. Do you have something like that? And I think you might have alluded to it earlier on.
Yeah, I kind of did. So my controversial take, and I'll say it in the most controversial way possible, just to get the attention, but ACOS does not matter, is my controversial take.
That's bold. Do you want to tell us why? Why does it not matter?
I'm actually going to leave the podcast right now.
Perfect. All right. We'll leave a cliffhanger then.
No, and so obviously, not that ad metrics don't matter, but I think solely looking at the ACOS paints a very skewed picture and doesn't always allow brands to hit their full growth potential. So I mentioned earlier, you want 20% of your sales to come from ads, 80% to be organic. And if you're only going off of your advertising ACOS as your leading metric or KPI, you're not going to get the full picture of how those organic sales are being affected by your ads. So the metric I prefer to look at is tacos. So Taco Tuesday, but tacos is total advertising cost of sale. And it can be the same thing with ROAS, right? So T-ROAS or tacos, whatever you want to use. But when you use a total ACoS metric or total ROAS metric versus just a PPC ACoS or ROAS metric, you get a much bigger picture into how much your sales are being affected by your ad spend month over month. And you're able to make much more informed decisions how you should allocate your spend between your products or on your catalog to then grow your sales profitably. So starting with those COGS, right? You look at the COGS, and if you realize like, okay, across an average for my whole catalog for all of my business on Amazon, I need a 15% total ACoS goal to hit profitability per sale and then be growing. That number, when you're just looking at ACoS, might be 30, like might be so skewed. Like it might be 30%, it might be 20%, it might be so off that when you try to optimize for just the PPC ACoS, there's a high chance you're leaving money on the table because you're not spending that little bit more past the threshold where you might not feel comfortable because you're not looking at the right metric to then grow your organic sales. Because I'm sure you've seen this, but we literally have specific campaigns that we will launch that help with increasing organic ranking. And so the goal is, again, like looking at that ACoS. If a client comes to me and tells me, hey, we have a 30% target ACoS, I tell them immediately, okay, that's great. And just know every campaign we launch is not going to hit the 30% metric, but averaging them out, we will, right? If you're telling me that's profitable, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, you're wrong and we're going to spend more because you're wrong. Like, no, you need to be making profitable sales, but you need to look at the whole picture. And so when you're just looking at that ACoS, you're not taking into effect, like I might spend $100 today and make $300 on just ad sales. But then in total sales for that one product, I might be making $600 or $800. And I might notice the next month, if I increase that spend to $200, then my total sales double versus just the ad sales, right? I might even see the ad sales drop and the organic sales double, which would be weird, but it wouldn't be the first time I've seen it. And again, your goal on Amazon should not be spend more, make more. It should be spend as little as possible on a product with a high margin and get the organic sales to grow. And I've seen this strategy work really, really well, specifically with consumable products that are on subscribe and save. And if you're a subscribe and save, customer, like that's kind of the one of the key metrics you're trying to drive your brand towards is increasing those subscribe and save counts. You really don't want to just be looking at ACoS because you are probably leaving a heck of a lot of customers on the table by not advertising to them or not increasing your ad spend that little bit to gain their sale. So looking at the total ACoS, and then another metric I love to look at and track is your cost per acquisition of a customer. And you ideally want that cost per acquisition to stay the same or drop over time, right? Like you don't want your cost to be increasing month over month to acquire a new customer. And ideally, you're seeing that once you acquire that new customer, they're getting on subscribe and save, and then they're staying for a good period of time to where now you're spending $0 on acquiring that customer every month or 3 months or whatever their subscribe and save rate is. And they're automatically ordering and you're getting an order into fulfillment, and then you're getting a higher margin than you would on any sale on Amazon because that person has spent $0 to find your product or to do a click or do anything to order your product. So I know it's kind of a long-winded answer, but...
No, I mean, I think you make a really good point though, right? Because the last just note I was going to say is that we were talking about earlier that generally when we're thinking about a mature brand on Amazon, we want to see that it's going to be 70% of their sales are organic, 30% from paid media. And, as you work towards that, obviously those numbers will be different. Yet we in the industry give so much focus to what's your ACoS, what's your ACoS, what's your ACoS. But that metric is very one-dimensional, right? Because it's just looking at one metric related to your advertising versus tacos takes into account kind of the broader picture. So I think you make a really good point.
And really it all starts like, I'll harp on this forever, but it really starts with analyzing your COGS and understanding what your limit is for cost per acquisition of a customer to be profitable. Because unless you have that number, you don't really even know your true target ACoS. Even if you're just going after that ACoS goal, like you have no idea what it is if you don't know your exact COGS plus the referral fees plus whatever length of ad spend you can kind of manage to hit a profitable sale. So it always starts with the COGS. And then even if you're a new brand, I suggest always try both, right? Like even though I'm saying like ACoS doesn't matter, like you track every metric and you're able to cross compare. But really, I highly advise for any brand, whether you're new or existing, if you haven't already looked at your tacos, start tracking that month over month or week over week. And notice as you make changes, right, those micro changes, whether it's the SEO, whether it's the creative, whether it's increasing or decreasing the PPC spend, see how that impacts your total sales and your total ACoS, because that will give you a better picture into how you can optimize moving forward to then grow your sales and grow your business.
Love it. Aman, you're the man. I really appreciate you coming on the show today. I mean, I feel like that was a great, you have a lot of very succinct thoughts put together. I can see where you're talking, and we didn't even really get into the whole system side of everything that you do, but you can really see that systematic kind of mindset working, right? I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Before we go, I wanted to take a second and kind of turn it around to you and give you the chance to kind of tell us where people might be able to connect to you or find you, or if they want to learn more. So I'll let you do that real quick.
Definitely. Well, Ben, first of all, thank you so much for having me, man. I know we've been talking for a couple years now. I remember I saw you at Prosper. I'm hoping to see more shows coming up in the future, and I'm just such a fan of Cellar Candy. It's been awesome working with you guys as partners for a short while, and really growing our relationship. It's been awesome. And I think kudos to you and to the team for everything you guys are doing with these podcasts, getting people on. Big shout out to CapForge again. But I know you've got some great guests on here, so I'm really honored to just be a part of it. And in terms of where you can find me, I mean, hey, if you're in San Diego, shoot me an email. I'm on at AOG Marketing, and we have an awesome office in La Jolla. I'd love to take you to lunch, and we can talk about ACOS tacos or any other KPI you want. But I will be, I attend some trade shows here in Southern California, so I'll probably be heading to a few of those. I'll probably be at the SEMA show in Vegas in November, and then again in Vegas in January for CES. And then you can definitely catch me at Prosper, and our team will be at Unbox too. So just know any event that you're going to, if it's e-commerce related, you'll find someone wearing these shiny new AO2 Seller Lab shirts. And you can catch me in San Diego anytime, hit my line, and I'm more than happy to meet for lunch or coffee.
Cool, love it. And for anyone watching, we'll include some of that information as well down below in the show notes, or if you're on YouTube, put it in the description as well too. So guys, that brings us, well, I'm on, and guys, is in anyone watching or listening, that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. So I wanted to say one more time, Aman, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ben.
Wow, that was an incredible episode. I hope that you listening, watching, wherever you are in the world, got some kind of value out of this show. As always, we appreciate you tuning into the Amazon Strategist Show. If you found some value in today's discussion, let us know. We request that you give us, a rating or review. It really does help us, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, or Google, to not only give us feedback, but also to reach other e-commerce enthusiasts just like yourself. Beyond that, don't forget to subscribe to our social media accounts. You'll get behind the scenes content, updates, and more. And all of this stuff is going to be found in the show notes or the description, depending on where you're watching or listening to this episode. So that is it for today's episode. Mark your calendar for next week. We will be back again for another amazing discussion with another titan in the Amazon industry to bring you some more expert insights and game-changing tips. Until then, my name is Ben Smith, signing off, and happy selling.